Who is your coworker from hell? I quit smoking due to a coworker that would follow me to every smoke break to talk about their problems when I needed some goddamn me time. It's been 3 years, and I still haven't bothered to pick the habit back up. Story 2. I had a 50-year-old colleague who would message women. Saw him finished in the open office. He sat next to me. Kept on happening, reported it. He said he had a balls rash, but admitted to messaging people on social media. I got in trouble for my accusations. Fast forward 8 months, he's sitting opposite me now. He finished again. I recorded him, showed my manager, and he was finally fired. He was a 2. Story 3. We had a sysadmin who would come to work and run his real estate business from his desk while he was supposed to be working. The whole time coughing and sneezing and sniffling constantly. We called him Itchy. He would also call friends and family and have hours-long conversations with them while we all had to listen. He picked up the nickname Thanksgiving Dinner Guy for using the break room, full kitchen, to cook entire meals that wouldn't be out of place at a family gathering. One of the offices in another wing had a sheet by the door for people to log when they saw him and what he was cooking that day. He didn't like any of us, the feeling was mutual, and left books like Gets at Work on his desk. When he finally got fired, they found out he never did any of his sysadmin work. No backups, no password changes, no log monitoring. Story 4. Had an assistant who plotted to get me fired and take my job. Some of my workers let me know because he tried to get them on board with him. Eventually, due to politics, I was demoted but asked to be put on the shift, relieving him. We would work 12-hour shifts on weekends. After being relieved by phone a couple of times against the rules, I intentionally came in 4 hours early and he was nowhere on site. I still got a call from him when he should have relieved me, like he was still on site. I let the guards know and they videotaped him and I got him fired. Story 5. She was a lady in her 50s. We worked at a doctor's office. Nothing was ever her fault. She could not take even the nicest constructive criticism and constantly complained about everything. One of my nicest coworkers ever, who was around the same age, so not an ageism thing, often was the recipient of her blame. And because she never took responsibility, it was regularly the same issues she never learned to correct. They bickered a lot after a couple years of this. One day, the nice coworker went to the car to grab her anxiety med, and the obnoxious one went to the office manager. And then HR saying she thought the nice one went to get a weapon to hurt her. Like what? She didn't even own a weapon? And the nice one got fired. I was absolutely shocked. Any lingering respect I had for her was gone. I've had a lot of jobs and met some crafty people, but she was the most stressful nightmare who could boo-hoo her way into getting pity parties on cue. Story 6. My old boss could be really good, but here are some of the things leading up to her getting fired. She would berate people into taking her random vitamin. She would insist that we all attend her hot yoga class. She would get people to do it by putting them on the clock. She would pinch your arm if she didn't like what you were saying to a customer. I had to share a room with her at a conference. She slept naked. She got so drunk she went to hang out with a random couple in their room. Came back and puked all over our room. She would climb ladders in front of customers while wearing tiny dresses. And on and on and on. I worked at a fancy bath bomb store in the UK. No, she was not my type. My type is men. She would pit me and the other floor managers against each other. We would have to go to her apartment when we were on the clock to make the schedule. She didn't own a microwave because of the microwaves, I think. She really hated our only male floor manager, probably because he'd applied for her job before she got it. He was no threat, so I didn't get why. Right before she got fired, we had a team meeting in a park. Employees brought their dogs, smoked, and were downright mean to her. She brought it all on herself, but it was awkward to watch. She had a few redeeming qualities, but her awful ones are much more memorable. Story 7. I used to work part-time at a shipping warehouse, and at one point we ended up hiring this 16-year-old kid. He made a ton of mistakes that we ended up having to fix for him. But I gave him the benefit of the doubt at first, just because he was new. But not only did he never learn from his duck-ups, but he was incredibly lazy and lacked any self-awareness. There were instances where he was given a task, but then he'd either idiot around on his phone most of the time, hide out in the bathroom for like 45 minutes, and then hoped we wouldn't notice, or just whine to my supervisor that he didn't want to do whatever he was assigned. Because of that, he would often take half the day to do like 30 minutes of work and would then complain that he had too much work piled on top of him. It was ridiculous. He lasted maybe a month before my supervisor let him go. Story 8. I briefly had a coworker at my current job at a local grocery store. We'll just call him Fred. Fred is one of those people who's always talking on his phone in the break room, and that's my personal pet peeve at work. More often than not, he's usually arguing with his girlfriend, and he doesn't seem to care that anyone's listening. He'd do other annoying, gross things like chewing with his mouth wide open and wiping his boogers all over the place. But then there was one day when he tried to flush a hot pocket down the toilet. Needless to say that it didn't play out so well, and that temporarily put an end to our closest employee restroom, right by the break room. He surprisingly didn't get fired over that, but he did get fired when one of his old high school teachers came in shopping and he threw a whole sack of potatoes at her. She was an elderly woman who got seriously injured, and both the ambulance and the cops had to get involved. I never did hear about what happened to his old teacher, but Fred, on the other hand, is currently in jail for not only assaulting his teacher, but he apparently also attacked his lawyer for reasons unknown. That's Fred. Story 9. She almost got me fired because she wanted to find the weakest looking guy to be her little errand boy. When I told her politely to go screw herself, she told her that I'd been taking work out of her queue in the system. It wasn't a very good lie though, because why would I want to do more work than I have to? I even said this to her in the disciplinary meeting. Story 10. I work with a woman who is threatened by other women, especially if they are younger and have more education than her. She consistently tries to discourage women from furthering their education and constantly tries to get women she is threatened by fired. She is a goddamn nightmare. Story 11. The 50-something turd that was the owner's son, spoiled brat, reminded me constantly who he was if I stood up to him. Creepy as hell too. Could never just tell any of the women they looked nice, and actually told me one day that my legs looked nice. I was wearing a skirt. That was the last time I wore a skirt to work for a long time. I immediately started looking for a new job within a month. There were so many other things that occurred, I was turned off from working for a small family-owned business since. Story 12. An MMA fighter with serious PTSD. Although it sounds like he was crazy and mean before he went to war. I have brownish skin, and he would threaten to hit me multiple times a day at work. Once he put me in a sleeper hold, just to put me down for fun, and 2 other guys had to get him off. Guy was laughing maniacally the whole time. Sometimes he would hit me around the waistline when no one was looking, so no one could see the bruises, threatened to hit me and my family members if I ever reported it. Our supervisor was an ex-Army Ranger, whom I deeply respected, but he defended this guy through it all, and I never understood that. Finally, the guy got fired after 2 years and ended up in jail for a while. But those were 2 terrible years. Story 13. He was in his 50s, had often uncontrolled diabetes, was 6 feet 4 inches tall. I was 24 and a foot shorter. Normally, he was a teddy bear, but when his blood sugar got low, he would get violent. He tried throwing punches at me for suggesting he get a Coke from the vending machine in the hall. Good thing he's slow and clumsy in that state. When we were in the truck together once and it started making a weird sound, I wanted to take it into the shop and he insisted we didn't need to by yelling at me and pounding his fists on the dash. But we were going to a remote area and I didn't want to have to try and find help if the truck broke down and the radio didn't work. I had to call search and rescue on him once because he didn't come back to the truck after doing a transect biology job. You guessed it, he had low blood sugar and was not able to find his way back to the truck. He had no education or experience in biology, but he just couldn't be fired from his job driving a plow. With his propensity to let himself get hypoglycemic, he couldn't drive either. So they shuffled him to the wildlife department because he had an interest in wildlife. I was basically his babysitter. Story 14. This was a person that was in the aircraft qualification training squadron at the same time as me. He wasn't an intentionally terrible person, but his lack of self-awareness made any interaction when around him difficult and exhausting. He washed out of another flying career field. In the first sims, before the flying phase, he refused to use established procedures, resulting in degraded ability to provide required data to external players. Managed to fail his first instructional ride, despite it being nearly impossible to fail if you show up. He could not figure out how to take leave, despite several people walking him through the process. Rather than trying to solve any problem, he would announce it to the rest of the room, and if no one jumped in to help him, ask the nearest person. He managed to frustrate and time-jack the kindest instructor I know because he didn't have a basic understanding of a training airspace. In a bid to get back to more pressing and more likely to be completed tasks, he gave me an apologetic look as he suggested that LT Pub Spotter was a smart student and could probably help him get up to speed. I could not. Story 15. She didn't officially work at my store's location. She was supposed to be at another location training to be a manager there, but her predecessor was still working at said location, and the upper management/boss didn't want too many people working there at once. So she had to work at my store's location instead. As soon as she started, she had a problem with me. I don't know why. I'll never understand why. And I suspect my resting Karen face had something to do with it. She essentially bullied me from the get-go, and when I told my manager about it, she claimed nothing could be done since the rude lady wasn't officially under my manager. So one day, the Karen started bumping into me and saying, "You have a problem with me? Let's take it outside," etc. I was half her size. I've never fought in my life outside of sibling squabbles, and I have terrible social anxiety. So I went to the bathroom, called my SO to come pick me up, grabbed my things, and walked out on my shift. I didn't say a word to anyone and left her there alone during lunch rush. I later learned from my friend, who also worked there, that my manager didn't blame me, and officially, like on the papers, she said I left for personal reasons. She was a nice woman, and I don't blame her for not being able to do anything. Upper management at this chain was very irresponsible and didn't seem to care about that store location whatsoever. Checks came in late almost every week. We weren't allowed to have more than 2 people working in the store at a time. Didn't always have enough budget to order food supplies, etc. I'm never working for that man's chain again. I may work for the same store, but I'm not going to work if it's one of the locations that a whole owns. Story 16. A few years back at my old job, we hired a web developer who on her first day on the job yelled at our CTO because her mouse didn't work. She proceeded to be not just unpleasant, but actively hostile to everyone she interacted with. I came in one morning at like 7 a.m. because I needed to test some stuff and saw her at her desk, eating a box of 7-Eleven wings and chugging a 2-liter Diet Coke. She then threw the box of bones into a bin and missed, spilling it everywhere. And she yelled really loudly, "Ah, ducking goddamn it, ugh," while me and 3 others were in the office. We all gave her the benefit of the doubt of extreme antisocial programmer personality, or maybe had personal problems to deal with, and everyone tried to be nice. The last straw was when she berated at the most beloved guy in the office, one of the ET personnel that everyone liked, and she gave him a sort of schoolmaster style talking down to in front of the whole office because her internet was slow. She was fired within like 2 weeks of hiring. Also, she smelled like old eggs and mildew. Story 17. We worked in a store that sold specific and fairly expensive products, and there were 4 of us working there, including the owner. The woman in question was basically his second in command. She seemed totally cool at the time, but then I got fired. And then a month later, our other coworker got fired. So it was just the 2 of them, and when the owner was busy, it was often just her. It wasn't long before he realized that she was stealing hundreds, if not thousands of dollars worth of products when he wasn't around, and that she'd manipulated him into firing his 2 other employees so she could have the store to herself. He has new employees now, and they're awesome. I plan on visiting a lot more once I'm vaccinated. Story 18. Going through a court thing with my ex-coworker ATM, actually. She's a nurse that apparently had her license taken away prior to her hire at my work. Our HR didn't bother checking, I guess. The first care meeting we had with her, she started accusing the staff for stealing. She had been there a week and didn't know what she was talking about. The team ran the best out of the whole company. She was determined to make everyone feel uncomfortable. She'd stand near the bathroom pretending to wait to go inside while listening to people chat in the kitchen/staff room. The bathroom was a 1-person bathroom and was obvious when no one was inside it. She'd chase staff down the hallway screaming at them for stealing. Then when they showed her they had nothing in their hands, she'd say, "Oh, I wasn't yelling at you, I was yelling at myself." She'd also tell the staff they weren't working hard enough to get a raise when they asked for one in a meeting with one of the bosses. He was idiot too, so he promoted her. Finally, after months of this bullcrap, she finally ducked up bad enough. A client had to go to hospital due to her negligence, and the family demanded to have a meeting about her attitude. She refused to acknowledge that she ducked up, tried to blame me for not reminding her that lunch was at 12 p.m., and told HR if she was going to get in trouble, she'd quit. My social worker friend, who was fired for complaining about this, nurses is currently in a court battle with the company and how they received tons of complaints about her crap and did nothing. Duck that company. Story 19. First day of work, she lit her desk on fire. Second day of work, she ate her lunch and broke out in hives. Third day of work, she arrives at work and sat in her passenger seat until one of us went out to check on her. She claims she hurt her back trying to pick up her purse and had one of her coworkers drove her home, would not let us use the same microwave as her as she claimed she was allergic to garlic. The list went on and on until she was fired. Oh, Marion, I wonder where you are now, as you were so entertaining. Story 20. Not as bad as some, but I'll never forget the 22-ish-year-old girl who spent hours of one shift telling me, with no prompting at all, about how she used to be a raging addict, but she was over it now and had become extremely religious. She went into very explicit detail about her substances deals and the things she'd done to get substances. My shy homeschooled ass was stunned. The very next day, she got fired for stealing $20 from the cash register. Story 21. This woman named Lori used to be an operator at my work. I've since replaced her. I worked as her assistant for 2 years. She always made the job 10 times harder than it was and would very rarely pay attention to the trim system on the winder, causing many paper blow-ups. Huge pain in the ass to clean up. Every shift I knew I'd be working my ass off for a solid 12 hours. Looking back, I get why she was the way she was. She was literally the only woman employed on the production floor and was constantly trying to prove herself. She eventually just got so fed up that she stopped caring. Near the end of her time there, we actually got quite close on a personal level. Some of the stories she told me about what some of the guys would do to her actually made me so sad for her. So what started as my coworker from hell is now actually one of my good friends. Funny how things work. Story 22. Girl I worked with when I was a personal shopper. She tried to get me fired a couple of times because she saw I was moving up faster than her. We both got sent to work at a different location for a couple of months, and she went around bad-mouthing me to anyone who would listen. So they thought I was a C employee, and she was amazing. I proved myself with my work ethic, and they realized she was a liar, and it definitely changed their opinion of her. I ended up going to a different location, and when she went back to our original location, she continued to say horrid things about me. My coworkers took my side and called her out on her BS. She left not long after on a bad note with them. Story 23, in civil service, there was this one woman who, 1, actively hit other people, 2, entered times on timesheets without the original party's consent. This is a huge no-no legally. 3, sabotaged my work and other people's. No matter how many complaints we submitted, she was never fired. Rumor had it she was never fired because she had some serious dirt on this administration, the kind that shouldn't be leaked to the press. Story 24. We had a middle-aged lady that smelled like tuna. I was a manager and had to send her home one particularly hot day. I also had to put her chair outside after she left as it still smelled. It was such a shame as she was a really nice lady. She just ducking stank. Story 25. Former supervisor. A bully, gossip, and an all-around horrible person that picked 1 or 2 people to be her punching bag. My introduction to her was when I was sitting at lunch and she came barreling at one of my coworkers and proceeded to literally scream and curse in his face in the break area. She also had a habit of gossiping in the warehouse office in full hearing of other people, which made me uncomfortable. It's one thing when a coworker gossips to another. It's an entirely different thing when a supervisor gossips about those under them to others. I actually casually mentioned to a different supervisor that it made me uneasy to be in the office while this was going on, and she got wind of it. She then decided to make me her target. Over the span of 6 months, she bullied me and behaved in some really disrespectful ways. She gossiped about me. How did I find out? She started doing it in front of me. She gave me a very unflattering nickname. I found out when she blurted it out one time when I came into the office. After being paged, she was passive-aggressive towards me in all respects. Growled at me in the ladies' locker room, put papers to cover her face so I couldn't look at her, sighed or scoffed when I tried to engage in conversation with other people, not her, ignored me, or outright walked away when I needed a supervisor override. She told me I needed to step it up with my work. I was the second most productive with the second lowest fault rate of my department. To give you an idea, on a typical day, first would do approximately 25 jobs. I would be at approximately 23. The other 5 people averaged approximately 15 jobs apiece. I finally had a breakdown after she started doing it in front of other supervisors and the manager. This was a week after I told the manager again about her behavior. Nothing was being done about it. I was ready to just walk off the job and had a breakdown. Someone told the manager's boss that I was having a breakdown, and she called me directly to find out what was going on. I was walked through an official HR report that went to the front office. She was given one last chance. I told them she wouldn't last a month. 3 weeks later, she had a screaming match with another employee and was suspended and subsequently fired. I later found out she was directly responsible for 3 people quitting and 1 person getting fired because they couldn't take it anymore and threw gloves at her. Story 26. This one coworker changed how I approached working. I was in the workforce for a decade when I decided to take a job with a very small, woman-owned company. It was just the owner and 2 employees, myself included. I worked my ass off and was very successful the first few months, and soon the other employees started to brazenly slack off, eventually calling in often with what became the lamest excuses, weekly. Once she was out for almost a month because of a vague family issue that I'm convinced was made up. Our boss was so lenient because my coworker had been there for years. I ended up working harder and extra hours, even weekends, to keep our clients happy and the business going strong, which I so realized just enabled my coworkers' craftiness. I quickly burned out, got the hell out, and never let any person or business ever exploit me and take advantage of me ever again. Duck you, Becca. Story 27. My former assistant manager. I quit that job. She got caught talking with her boyfriend for several hours, never leaving our department desk, green hardware store prevalent in the Midwest, and got in serious trouble. Like, do it again and you're demoted back to part-time. Well, she forbade me from speaking to my boyfriend at all when we were working. One day, a month or so before I got the offer for my new and current job, I asked to take the recycle bin to the back where he worked, and she said no. A little later, she got annoyed at me for only facing shelves and told me to find something else to do. So I took the recycle back and brought freight up. She came to the back aisle, screaming her head off at me because she told me not to go back there, and I defended myself saying, "Well, you told me to do something else, so I was doing something else." I turned around and I guess she flipped me the bird, caught on camera, and walked away calling me a bitch. One of my coworkers went to HR about it as it wasn't the first time she's gone off on me, and I was just ignoring it, and they were fed up with her general treatment of everyone. We both got called back to write statements, and I wrote that I saw neither the finger nor heard her call me any names, but did go on about everything else. There were no punishments, however. About a week after I left, I get a text from a former coworker saying that said manager was with a customer when HR called her on the store phone. Manager answered, asked her to hold, and didn't press the hold button. Got demoted the next day back to a cashier for calling a guest stupid while HR was on the phone. Made my life a hellhole when we worked together. But darn was it satisfying to hear karma caught up to her. Story 28. Okay, this may not be my most hellish coworker, but I have a weird one for you guys. My first ever job was at a coffee shop chain. The location I was at was connected to a gas station / convenience store. We kind of had an L-shaped corner of the store. As such, we didn't have a ton of space, including room for the larger ovens needed to cook bagels. So instead, we would have our bagels delivered to us from another, larger location down the road. For a while, the baker was this really weird, quiet girl who seemed to lack social self-awareness. She always seemed a little unclean and just lingered a little too long around people without really saying anything. Honestly, she just put out not quite right vibes. Anyway, one day I head in at 6 and there are no bagels. I asked my manager if the store down the road was running behind or if they had a call out. Both were fairly common. My manager points to the rack of newspapers the convenience store had by the entrance and tells me to read the headline. Apparently, the weird girl was in FBI custody. Basically, there was a couple who had kidnapped. I won't get into why, as it may be a TW for some. Weird girl was renting a room from the couple, knew what was happening, and never told anyone. Somehow, they were all found out and arrested, and the young girl was reunited with her family. Reading the story, the whole thing felt very Twilight Zone. Story 29, duck throwaways. I hope he sees this. I have a coworker right now that is his own special blend of hell. For the record, I work in sales at a warehouse. Here's a list of some of his finer qualities. When the phone rings, he will literally put his hand on the receiver, stare at the caller ID, then look around the room to see if anyone else will answer it before he does. Doesn't matter how busy we are. He does this with every single call. If a customer walks in the door, he tries to hide behind his monitor, even though his desk is the first one you see as you walk through the door. So let's say he does engage the customer who walked in. Oh, now he wants to answer all the phone calls that come in, while he's supposed to be helping the guy who is literally standing directly in front of him. If it's not a big order, he doesn't care. You ordered one thing that costs $15, he just forgets about it. Then when the customer calls back to complain, he just acts like he never talked to them. Oh, and did I forget that he won't look the product up himself? He makes the customer find the part number they think they need because he's too ducking lazy to look it up on his own. Oh, that other customer called and talked to you and you offered him product X for $200? When that customer calls back, if he gets the call, he will offer them the same product for $190 just so he can steal the sale from you. He constantly eats candy, chips, cupcakes, cookies, tacos, Pop-Tarts, chili, you name it. This wouldn't normally be too bad, except when he eats, he doesn't work. This also has a separate side effect. He is heavy, but it's all upper body weight, which means when he walks, he has to constantly hold his pants up with his hand. Can't really help move stuff in the warehouse or put things away when you're constantly holding your pants up, can you? He is somehow completely computer illiterate, even though he sits in front of the damn thing for 10 hours a day. He actively refuses to learn new things or organization tactics for using the computer. An example, a customer calls up and asks for a copy of an invoice. In our program, you can generate a PDF copy to email directly to the customer without ever getting up. No, he's old school. He prints the invoice, walks across the room, puts it in the scanner, scans it, saves the scanned copy as a PDF, then emails it to the customer. A process that should take 30 seconds now takes 10 minutes, especially because he's too ducking lazy to get up and walk to the printer more than once an hour or so. Don't even get me started on email. The last time I looked, he had over 29,000 unread emails. You want to make sure he never sees something, just email it to him. Unless it's an incoming order, then he snipes that crap right away. He has exactly one admin responsibility: to enter in tracking numbers after products have shipped. If you keep on it once a day, it takes maybe 10 minutes, but not for him. It takes him at least 30 to 45 minutes. God forbid he misses a day or two, then it takes at least 2 hours for him to get them done, if no one has gotten pissed off and done them for him at that point, because they're tired of waiting. He leaves handwritten notes for you to call customers back, but his handwriting is so bad you can't read what he wrote. He writes down account numbers that end up looking like line noise. For some reason, when there's just 2 of us in the office, he thinks that's the right time to make a long personal call about a hospital bill, or a call to his bank, or checking on parts he ordered online. So I end up doing all the work so he can haggle about getting a $2 late fee removed from an account. He won't ever actually ask for people to do things. Hypothetical. Instead of turning on a light switch or asking someone to turn on a light switch, He would just sit there and say, "Man, kind of dark in here. Wish someone could get that light." Then he just stares at everyone else waiting for them to turn on the light. If there's a problem, he won't do anything about it. You need a return or exchange? Sorry, he doesn't care. Something defective? Don't call him, you'll never get an answer, much less a replacement part. I dread going to work every day just because I don't want to clean up after his bullcrap messes. He leaves for customers every day. Story 30. My manager a few jobs ago. It was a tech company. We were the marketing team, which really just meant digital marketing. She had a very loose grasp on how our various tech platforms worked, and one day said to me when discussing her exasperation at posting a YouTube video to our brand channel, "I don't really understand the internet." She was dead serious. It was 2014. She was ultimately fired. Story 31. They acted like a friend in broad strokes, but over time, the little things showed that it was all bullcrap. The one incident that sticks out to me to this day is when I told her that my mom was hand-making my wife-to-be's wedding dress. Most people respond with some variation of, "Oh, that's so cute," and it's a fun moment. This Karen? She said, "Couldn't you afford a proper one?" Not such a fun moment. Story 32. Back when I used to load trucks, we had a dude who lasted exactly 2 days on the job. His first day, he seemed normal enough. His second day, he came in drunk as duck, a real no-no when you are working around heavy equipment. And instead of getting down to business, he just kind of bananaed around, doing a half-assed job, thereby making everyone else's job harder, and making crude jokes about the other workers on the line. And when the line supervisor told him to knock it off and do his job, he told her to stop being a Karen. Thank the jackass did not come back because we all wanted to kick his ass after that day. Story 33, TLDR, worked with a guy who spent 20 years in prison for murder. He harassed and bullied me. I beat him up. I got paid out from company due to their neglect in the matter. I worked in a glass distribution factory as a material handler on night shift alongside 4 other workers and then 1 supervisor and his 2 IC. The 2 IC was the coworker from hell. He was 2 years out of 20-year murder sentence in prison, and he just would not stop bragging about how he'd do it. He would make little subtle comments about how he could easily hit again if he wanted to. Dude was so institutionalized by prison, which, in all honesty, I can't knock him for. 20 years in prison would duck with your head, however. For reasons unbeknownst to me, they put this man who had been stripped and deprived or all freedom and power and put him in a secondary management role. He would abuse the duck out of his power and make slimy, grotty little remarks about the smallest things. I considered myself to be the most optimistic person. But after 5 years of working alongside this man and his incredibly depressing, narcissistic behavior, I found myself quite miserable. If you could imagine Eeyore, the donkey from Winnie the Pooh, that was my spirit animal. To make matters worse, he would continuously harass employees, both female and male. He'd make ducked-up comments about ladies' feet. We complained a magnitude of times to her, but absolutely ducking nothing got done. Of course, everyone wanted to go to Fairworks, but all of us were mentally debilitated from the place. Literally, everyone just stuck it out with the dude. That was until one day I had flipped my absolute ducking lid on him. My grandparents had just passed away, and due to them being from a different country to where I am now, I couldn't go back for their funerals due to COVID restrictions. I was a new parent. I was sleep deprived, overworked, and ducked off beyond belief. That kid decided to make the mistake of pushing me over the edge. I had just applied for some stress leave plus holiday time to recoup myself and have my own grieving period, seeing as I wasn't allowed to leave for my grandparents' funerals. After catching light of my grandparents dying and me being completely exhausted physically and mentally, old mate decided it would be a good idea to tell me that you shouldn't need time off anyway. Your grandparents are already dead and gone, and you can't go back to see them. You may as well stay at work. Plus, whose ass would I get to look at climbing up and down the trucks? He finished by smacking me on the ass. I turned to face him, and before I could even resist myself, I just started swinging. I must have thrown over 10 punches, some of them missing. One of them actually put him on the ground, and from that point, I was stomping all over him. Absolutely ducking, kicked his ass until he was literally squealing like a pig for someone to help him. I found it within myself to stop and just immediately burst into tears. Body was shaking, just could not control myself. This is the most justifying part for me. Just behind the truck I was working on was another one of my coworkers who witnessed the whole thing. He actually had it all on video, and although you can't really hear what was said, it shows loud and clear of me being smacked on the ass. I basically plead that I was defending myself from assault from an ex-prisoner. I was paid a hefty amount of money from the company due to their neglect, and then 2 months later, I quit. Now I'm 6 months into a new job that I just absolutely love. Story 34. This woman who hated me and always had to be better than me. It was awful. First time I have ever cried at work. One day, I caught her in a bold-faced lie. I had taken a day off. She said when I returned that the boss had asked questions about where I had been on my day off. My boss knew exactly where I had been. I knew because I had told her. So I knew this was a lie, and she was just being nosy. Called her out. She had no response but tears about how I was mean to her. It was very satisfying to see her caught in a lie by the boss after years of lying to and manipulating her coworkers. Story 35. Oh, being in the culinary industry, I can tell you some coworkers from hell. There have been a lot of nasty chefs or crazy chefs that I have worked with. I know the industry is hard and at times, shift can be difficult. However, some people just cross the line. The place I worked had a small restaurant with a pub attached to it along with a function room. We had the head chef, sous chef, then 3 other chefs and a KE. We was one family in that kitchen, and we never used ranks as a point of power. Everyone was equal. Now, before I start talking about R, I feel like I should say that in my opinion, I feel like he has some sort of mental illness that he either doesn't know or is unwilling to tell people about. Anyway, he was hired to replace the sous chef of the restaurant. His resume looked good, his personality checked out, and he came from the same background as me. I was a training as a sous at this point since I wanted to learn it, so I worked under him, and we got along well at first. I had a holiday booked just after he arrived, so I didn't spend the first 2 weeks with him. After I returned, I got to working with him and everything seemed fine. Then, one day, just like flicking a light switch, he flipped. All I did was ask if he put a certain ingredient in sauce, because it was about 7 p.m.-ish, busy service, and I had an important question. He said that I could text him about anything at any time, since I was by myself for the first time. But oh my, did he flip out? My phone was going crazy, buzz after buzz, how I shouldn't be going against him. How I shouldn't be attacking him about this one ingredient. I was only asking if he put anchovies in the sauce because a customer had a severe allergy to fish and the dish was new to me. He then started saying how he will go to the head chef and report for me, attacking him about it all. I just let it go that night and focused on service and then sleep. Since I was back to work at 8 a.m. Being tired, I forgot I was working with R the following day. Dreading it, I went into work to a happy, cheerful R. It was weird, but I brushed it aside and continued with the prep work. Until he wanted to pull me aside to chat about something, so I told him to let me finish making the dessert and I'll be right out. After he walked outside, I quickly grabbed the other chef working on the shift. Z explained everything and Z decided to stay close as I spoke to R. I was happy Z did as R went psycho about the damn anchovy question. That he reported me for it, how he doesn't believe in using rank as power, but then continues to say how he is in a higher position than me and I should obey every command. Even his eyes were locked onto me in a freaky way, like when your cat stares at you from down the hall for no reason. Anyway, he told me to never speak to him again and that he wanted to lower me back to a KP to learn ranking. Then, at the end of it all, he wanted me to shake his hand and have a cup of tea as friends. Like what the actual duck? He changed his tone when Z came out to ask me a fake question because of how uncomfortable I looked. This went on for a little while, with him working shifts and not really saying anything to me. Then stages of speaking to me about my day, which quickly returned to silence. Suddenly one day we had a big wedding party to do, but ER decided to text me saying how he will block me and never return to work there again because of me. So I was left with Z to run 2 sections each for a wedding party of nearly 100 people. All the staff on shift got together and worked extremely hard, constantly offering me moral support and cold drinks. Do love cold drinks in a hot kitchen anyway. He decided to report me to the head chef, saying how I was mistreating him. So the head chef called a meeting in which everyone must attend. During the meeting, Z decided to speak to the head chef, explaining everything, along with the front of house and fellow chefs mentioning how they noticed his crazy behavior towards me. R decided to justify his point of saying how he runs the kitchen as a sous chef and that everyone should listen to him. The manager decided to fire him on the spot, but just before that, promoting me to sous chef since I showed I'm capable of running the restaurant and that the wedding couple were so overjoyed with the party. The wedding left a huge tip of just over 2,000 pounds. Story 36. Rick, the misogynistic idiot, he was my lead 4 years ago. I am a female engineer, the only one on that team. He was always checking my work and send someone out with me. I thought, but was because we had never worked together before. Then one day in a group meeting with the entire group, he said, "Women don't make good engineers because they can only make decisions based on emotion." Everyone's jaws dropped, and they looked at me. I was so shocked. All I could come up with was, yeah, because that is how I figured out how much to put into my 401k. I left the group. He invited me to his retirement party. I told him I was happy he was retiring. He thought it was a compliment. My current worst coworker is a lady that always has the attitude of, "You're wrong, because you don't understand." There are 2 of us ladies now, but she's annoying. Not horrible though, so that's a big step up. Story 37. This one that thought she knew everything and would steal people's comments. You'd tell her a fact and then she disagrees. I was talking about Arrested Development and blah blah blah. She stole that conversation. I told her about me going to a festival she went to and I had the exact experience. Someone asked if I was a fish because I was chugging water. She asked me the same question later. She'd say a random fact that everyone knows about and make it out to be like she just discovered it. She'd argue with people who knew more about a certain topic like she was an expert. She talked too much crap, almost go fired for it. Wish she did. Embellishes stories to get people in trouble. She's mildly idiot and a hypocrite. What made it worse was when she did something offensive and we went to the manager. The manager, also mildly idiot, would defend her and say, "That's just who she is. She's the reason I left a decently good job, crap got too toxic, and it wasn't worth staying." Story 38. Worked in a metal shop at the time. A guy got hired because he grew up with our building manager, and our manager was a nice guy and gave an old buddy who fell into the substances life when they were in high school a chance to turn his life around. We'll call him Jimmy. Jimmy was the result of spending 10 years doing petty crimes and hard substances. Jimmy had two forms: dead on his feet, tired, and high as crap. He was on parole and had to check in with his PO every 2 weeks. The first day he worked there, he was high as crap. Jimmy was for all of his faults. A pretty funny guy. He said a lot of funny ducked up crap, but it was also sad because you could always tell he was ducking high. We did a lot of hand form on parts, including hammering them. In his first day, I witnessed a high as crap. Jimmy hit his hand or fingers with said hammer at least 6 times. Thankfully, because he was high, it didn't seem to hurt that bad, or as Jimmy said, "I can't feel pain much. I'm an alpha male." A few weeks later, Jimmy went to jail for 4 weeks because his PO went to check on him and he wasn't there. He also failed his UA, which was what sent him to jail. He came back as our building manager, gave him one last chance. Well, Jimmy's antics and lack of talent in hand form pissed off our lead, who got him transferred to the loading dock. I remember when Jimmy told us he was getting promoted, I thought, holy crap, they're putting him on a forklift. Jimmy was clumsy high or sober, so this wasn't a good idea, but he wanted to do it. And the building manager said if he passed the cert test, he could. Jimmy did his forklift cert test, and much to everyone's surprise, he passed. I remember the first time seeing him on a forklift and thanking God that I worked on the opposite side of the building. A small crowd actually watched him the first day. I saw him almost drop his load multiple times and almost take down an entire shelf of sheet metal. Jimmy's new coworkers did not like him, mostly Russian dudes. One of them went off on Jimmy in Russian one time, then walked off shaking his head and throwing his arms around. Jimmy asked me, "You think he's pissed?" I said, "Dunno, I don't speak Russian." Jimmy had a lot of strange work habits. He was always complaining about joint pain, probably because he was actually trying to stay clean. And he would grind up about 10 Excedrin pills and put them in his coffee or in his lip. He also drank about 6 to 10 cups of coffee per day, as far as I could tell. Jimmy had a 3-year-old daughter, and her mom and him were very much on and off again. At this point, about 4 months of working there, Jimmy was pretty much hated by everyone. He liked me a lot because I never called him on his bullcrap. I was able to find entertainment in Jimmy because I wasn't his boss, so he wasn't my problem. To his credit, despite sub-sentences, making him a legitimate git at this point, Jimmy seemed to be working pretty hard. Probably to distract himself from wanting substances and maybe wanting to see his daughter again. Well, eventually one day we all heard Jimmy had a UA from his PO come up, and he once again did not pass. Building manager let him go and he went to jail. He told me he felt bad for him because he saw him get into that life in high school. He said he wanted to give him a chance to turn his life around, but felt like a git. I told him what he did for Jimmy was actually really cool, and it's a shame that he squandered the opportunity given to him. And it's not his fault that he did. All Jimmy had to do was not do substances. Story 39. Worked with a guy that was a supervisor in another department. Dumb and an a-hole, bad combo. Would constantly insist that I do things that violated OSHA rules or were physically impossible. Wanted me to work on a 20-ton bridge crane while he was using it. Obviously, I said no. Every time I would refuse one of these ridiculous demands, he would send out an email with everyone CC'd, from the area manager, plant manager, all the way down to my boss. Soon after I left for a better job, he was fired, and they closed his email account as he was writing a manifesto. I heard they hired armed security to keep a lookout for him for the next month. I forgot to mention that the supervisor was missing most of his front teeth. He came back to work after a vacation missing teeth. Told everyone it was an auto accident or some crap. His cousin worked there at the time and told everyone there was no auto accident, that the two of them were at a family barbecue. Well, this supervisor got drunk and started running his mouth and I guess kept ragging on about a relative's wife, and long story short, the relative ended up on top of him, pummeling his face and knocking out teeth. He was the kind of guy that everyone fantasized about punching. Story 40. She told our boss that she wanted to break into my apartment and touch all of my stuff because I bet it's all really cool. This was right after I found out she'd moved into the apartment next door. She would send stuff to my apartment just so I would put it on her stoop and knock on her door. Story 41. A vet's office I worked for hired a girl to work as a tech whose only relevant experience was working in a non-medical boarding facility. She thought she was hot stuff. She expected to waltz right in with zero medical experience and get promoted to management above techs that had been working there for years by sucking up to the bosses. Problem was, not only did she not have the experience, she also lacked the work ethic and desire to actually do any of the tech stuff. She just wanted to be able to cuddle puppies, sit at a computer, and boss peons around. So instead of learning how to do the job better or actually putting in any effort, she decides the best way to get promoted is to make everyone else look bad and feel miserable. When things didn't go her way, she would make vague, meritless complaints that her coworkers were being mean to her. Every week, someone was brought into the office about it. The thing is, the other 20-odd employees pointed out that maybe, just maybe, if she was the one having problems with everybody, it could have been her. In the end, we lost about half the staff because of this chick. Ended up having to hire folks with no veterinary experience to replace people that had been there 7+ years. So it wasn't just the staff that suffered. Quality of care took a noticeable hit. I stuck around for another year, but finally, between her and the by then obvious management problems, I had enough. After I left, she got bold enough to send threatening text messages to a couple of coworkers. We all had each other's numbers to coordinate weekend duties. They reported her to the cops, and they arrested her while she was at work. If not for that, she'd probably still be there kissing the right asses while running off staff. Story 42. I worked in restaurants for years, which came with a whole slew of crazy, interesting characters, but one of the worst, and that actually affected me the most, was a guy at an office job I had a few years back. The biggest thing was that he was a compulsive liar. He also made inappropriate comments to myself and other women on our team, but I could honestly deal with that. It was the constant, outright bold-faced, bald-faced lies he told literally every time he spoke. He would call out all the time with various ailments. One time his earlobe was a little swollen, so he called out. He also claimed that he didn't drink or do substances, but he would go out with his friends to bars every night and very clearly get crap-faced. He often called out because he was hungover, but of course he wouldn't admit that, not even sure why he lied about not drinking in the first place. He made up random crap like that all the time, and called out sick. And when our boss finally called him on calling out sick so often, he made up new reasons. My favorite was when he said that he couldn't come to work because his car got stolen. Okay, maybe fair, but this is the story he told. He left work the night before. Let's say it was a Tuesday. He left a little late, so a lot of us were already gone. But not everyone, and most of the bosses were still in the building. So he gets to the parking lot and his car is gone, stolen. That alone is shady enough because we were on a main road in a business district with cameras on most of the buildings. He could have been parked out of view of the cameras, but still. There are office buildings, coffee shops, and roads all around, and he's claiming someone stole his random mid-range car in the middle of the day during the winter in Alaska? Really? But okay, let's say that did happen. What he claims he did next is the more insane, ridiculous part. So he claims he got outside and was certain his car had been stolen, right? If I were him, I would have gone back into the building and called the cops, and then told our manager what was going on to see if she could pull the security tapes. If for some godforsaken reason I absolutely could not or would not go back inside or call the cops, I would have called a cab, Uber/Lyft, or a friend to come get me. He did none of these things. He says that when he got outside and saw that his car was stolen, he simply walked home. In a blizzard in Alaska in January, meaning it was also completely dark outside by that time of day, in his work suit shoes with no coat besides his blazer, he did not call the police, go back into the building and tell someone, or even call a ride. Nope, he just walked several miles back to his apartment. Anyway, that's just one example. This dude did this stuff constantly. I ended up quitting before they finally ousted him. But a couple of weeks after I left, he finally got fired because he called in sick, when he had already been out more than double the 2 weeks of sick leave we got. And then someone showed the boss a Snapchat story of him partying the night before. Not a private story or a snap sent personally to the other employee, just on his public snap for everyone to see. Story 43. Had a colleague who genuinely enjoyed seeing people not do well and enjoyed when people felt uncomfortable. She's very manipulative and is actually quite good at it. She would ask you questions and sympathize with whatever you've got going on, only to turn around and tell everyone what you just confessed to her. After about 2 to 3 months with the company, if she hasn't already somehow screwed you over, you've heard enough about her to know that if you don't want the rest of the room to find out, then you don't tell her. Yeah, I'm talking about you, Carolina. Story 44. The crap Midas. Everything he touched turned to complete crap. God help you if he got assigned to work on one of your projects. He was a unique blend of stupid, mean, ignorant, arrogant, charming, and sneaky AF. Literally the only things he was good at one. He had an unbelievable survival instinct too. He was a true predator and could sense when people around him were easily manipulatable. He used this to his advantage and had people in each department who were seemingly inexplicably under his spell. They would do portions of his work for him. One particularly lonely coworker Even wrote most of his master's thesis for him. SMH. This is the only person I've ever heard of whose coworkers literally all went to therapy to deal with the stress of working with him. Prior to starting in this unit with him, 2 coworkers of mine took me aside. Coworkers. You need to know about Crap Midas. He's charming initially, but you'll soon see that the only thing he should ever be trusted with is being a greeter at a barbecue restaurant. He can't be trusted to do anything but say, "Howdy, folks." He couldn't hand out menus. He couldn't be trusted to assign tables or give out balloons to kids. Just howdy, folks. That's it. We work in an office. Me. You guys are a holes. He can't be that bad. How'd he get a job here if he's so horrible? We know it sounds mean, but you'll see soon enough. Also, don't ever be alone with him if you can help it. He said a lot of inappropriate things to women. Me. Thinking this is vastly overblown, but surprised that men are telling me to watch out for a harasser. Okay, well, I'm going to judge for myself. Thanks for the heads up. Cut to 2 months later, me to coworkers. Guys, why did you undersell this to me? It's so much worse than you said. He's already wrecked 2 of my complex spreadsheets and saved over them multiple times, even though he doesn't work on my projects. When asked, he says he was just looking at them because he was curious. Plus, out of nowhere, while we were driving to a meeting in another city, why the duck hasn't he been fired? We know. We wanted you to take us seriously, but it's so unbelievably crazy to work with him, you just can't adequately explain it to other people. Story 45. They told me bare minimum of any task the workstation required, poor communication, disinterested in literally everything, treated details as something obvious I should have somehow known, etc., etc. The most awkward workday ever. Story 46. Maintenance psycho with clear mental issues that would sabotage the hotel to see it burn and come out of it as a savior. Would secretly enter the premises and empty the swimming pool, turn off boilers, make fire alarms go off, etc. Hundreds of people yelling and complaining at the front desk, making the life of every worker a living nightmare. Many quit from the stress, as every other day employees would get rushed by the entire hotel. I recall an occasion in the middle of summer and a huge empty swimming pool that had been mysteriously emptied during the night. City wouldn't allow it to be filled due to the drought. Dozens of families absolutely furious, threatening suing, leaving the hotel, demanding refunds we couldn't process. Police had to come to prevent aggressions. Meanwhile, that maintenance psychopath proposed the solution to use his tractor to fill a cistern with river water and start refilling the pool, obviously at an extra cost. He spent 1 entire week filling it instead as solving other pressing issues. The best part was that it is illegal to take water from rivers without a license, much less to fill public pools with it due to high levels of chemicals coming from agriculture, and that can't be easily erased by common treatments. As such, he was fined for taking the water but blamed the hotel. Hotel got fined for promoting this as a desperate measure to save summer season, and then got fined again because pool was open with improper pool water. This employee would often get super late to work. His justification was a medical issue that made him allegedly enter a zombie mode. In other words, he would get in his car and come to his senses 30 miles in the mountains without having noticed it. He once had been given the responsibility to buy some wine for a celebration we were hosting the next day. He did buy it, but instead of coming to work early morning, he had one of those episodes and got lost somewhere. We had to serve warm wine. Because this was a health issue, we couldn't fire him. And once we never caught him sabotaging the hotel, we could not get rid of him. Also, in my country, you can't fire someone without a valid reason and hire someone new to replace him. We had a lucky break when, during a Sunday afternoon after checkouts, only 3 clients were staying in as they just had a mountain bike competition during the afternoon. They had the bikes stolen from their parking space. Staff universal keys are numbered and associated to each worker. He didn't know that. He thought he could just ask for universal cards and do whatever without leaving traces. Obviously, after checking, his card was registered in the log as the last one to open the parking space. He got fired the next day and we could finally breathe, except not. Furious from being caught, he kept entering the outdoors premises at night and sabotaging everything from power lines to water distribution. This kept going for months, and although we were sure it was him, we could never caught him in action. He knew all access, all openings, flaws, and structural issues of the building and its operation. Last resource was to hire a surveillance specialist that set up an extensive night cameras networks around the hotel gardens and pools. We finally got him on tape, and police caught him in the act. He was arrested and sentenced to prison. Story 47, Casey. Casey forgot to show up for her interview, but was somehow still hired. Casey seemed to have all the signs of ADHD, and admitted she probably did, but her dad was a doctor and said it wasn't a real thing, so she never got treatment. Casey told long, rambling stories about things no one cared about, and would try to read personal items in your purse. Casey worked the late rotation after the supervisors left and would just read fan fiction, leaving everyone else to work the joint queue while doing nothing herself. Casey bounced on a rubber exercise ball that squeaked. Everyone got theirs taken away because Casey fell off hers and they were deemed a safety hazard. Casey would kick her shoes off and rub her fingers between her bare toes at her desk. After everyone left, Casey would raid their candy jars and snack drawers with her toe hand. The only nice thing the evil supervisor ever did was fire Casey. Story 48. It's a close tie. First was the store manager who was supposed to be training me to get my own store, but somehow decided I was a threat and proceeded to try and screw me over and actively put a hamper on my training. Second was a dude who actively sandbagged his sales numbers in all categories except for one, to the detriment of his commission checks. So he could get praise in the district. Story 49. One day, my shift manager rewarded us for getting through the rush with free milkshakes from next door. I was so happy and couldn't wait to drink mine. I went out on a delivery. I work at a pizza joint. Before I could drink the shake, so I put my name on it in Sharpie and put it in the fridge. When I came back, I saw my coworker drinking it. Dude makes eye contact and finishes it right in front of me. Oh, story 50. Back in the days of the boo-boo bus, my regular partner swapped a shift with this dude. We'll call him Jay, mostly because that's his actual name. And duck that dude. If he sees this and knows it's about him, he's a turd. Anyway, so I'm working with Jay one night. We get our first call. It's fairly minor. Take grandma to the hospital, and we're staged waiting for another call. I'd taken the first call and already finished my report, so I was in the driver's seat. We get an alert to stage for police for a dude who want to end and thinks people are after him. So we park a couple blocks down and around the corner and we wait. An hour goes by. The dispatcher has no idea when police will be there and has been on the phone with this dude the whole time, so she texts and asks if we can drive by and make sure he's okay. So I do a little drive-by and I see a very small, wide-eyed man out in front of an apartment building, completely alone. No one else in the area. So we go back to our hiding spot, report that up, and wait for another hour. Now that our poor dispatcher has been stuck on the phone with this dude for 2 hours, and police are nowhere to be found, she asks if we'll take the call and just get it over with. Now, this patient is small, like possibly under 100 pounds small. I'm a big-ish dude. Jay is in no way in shape, but at least has 100 pounds on this dude. Anyway, I say, duck it, we're going in. Jay throws a small fit. I tell him to be a man. We get there, search the dude, ask what's going on. He's schizophrenic, having an episode of paranoia, and is feeling want to pass. Cut and dry, run-of-the-mill, let's get you off to the hospital. So I'm driving off to the hospital, and I hear Jay in the back calling report to the hospital. I hear him say something about a panic attack. It seemed like a very short phone call. I didn't hear him mention death ideation. I was hoping I'd just missed something. So we get to the hospital, I'm pulling the foot end of the cot. The registration lady asks, "What's the chief complaint?" I say, "Death ideation." Out comes the charge nurse, and she's pissed. She's demanding to know when this call became for death ideation. How long has he been saying that? Nurse stuff, anger, etc. So Jay's response is, "Well, we found that out en route." So luckily I had the truck phone in my pocket with the dispatch criteria, and I pulled it out and I said, "No, we didn't. That was literally the dispatch criteria." So Jay got yelled at. No regrets. If you do something on accident, I will have your back all day. But that was just gross incompetence. It went on with dumb crap like that all night. Duck that dude. Duck you, Jay. Story 51. I teach culinary arts. Aside from this year, which has been virtual and out of the ordinary, I largely enjoy what I do. I'm also autistic and am able to function because my kitchen and the adjoining classroom are highly structured. A few years ago, our building administration hired a special ed teacher who had a PhD. She was supposed to be some sort of autism specialist. When she found out that I was on the spectrum, she insisted upon meeting me. When she found that I'm a recluse when I'm not at work, she told me that this wasn't acceptable. She then forced me to borrow a children's book on social guidelines, i.e., how to start conversations, how to make friends, etc. Since she wouldn't take no for an answer, I took the book and shoved it into a desk drawer. She subsequently began dropping by after school to loudly demand that I feed her snacks. Come on, I know you gotta have something stashed away. Chefs always have food stashed away, so what do you have? I admitted to stocking ice cream, pastries, and cookies. Since I was raised to be hospitable, I offered her a snack, but one snack wouldn't be enough. Her husband, who was retired, was on campus and he needed a snack. She also wanted a snack for her aide. She took a half-dozen cookies and 3 ice creams and left without so much as a thank you. This happened day after day after day. She took and she took and she took. She never thanked me, and she never offered to reimburse me. One day she popped her head into my kitchen. "I'm not getting a snack from you today," she announced. "My husband just brought burgers from Carl's Jr., and sure enough, she had a burger, fries, and a shake. Did she even think to give me anything for weeks of mooched snacks? Of course not. I decided then and there to cut her off. On the following day, when she popped into the kitchen loudly saying, "Okay, what do you got?" I looked at her and said, "For you, nothing. I'm having some homemade glazed berry tarts that I drizzled with a white chocolate ganache. Her eyes lit up. I love glazed berry tarts with a chocolate ganache. Gimme. No, I said, holding the plate away from her. These are mine. She stared at me. But you have a whole plate, and I'm going to share these with some friends. But I'm your friend. I shook my head. She left in a huff and never talked to me again. At the end of the year, she transferred to another school with the principal's blessing. She had apparently not been getting along with her special ed colleagues because she was a hoity-toity PhD, and none of her peers had anything more than a master's. Even though she wasn't the department chair, she somehow thought that her educational credentials had made her the head of her department, which just wasn't true. Story 52, woman with no boundaries who always made herself out to be the victim. No, always genuinely believed she was the victim. The first time I ever met her, she showed me her engagement ring and invited me to her wedding. Another time she sat down next to a coworker and asked him how his parents had reacted when he came out. Mind you, this guy had never said anything at work about being gay. So she just assumed that about him and then asked him about something that could be a touchy subject in the middle of his shift. Oh, and then when he mentioned it to our manager and she was dressed down for inappropriate behavior, she went up to him to apologize, full on sobbing, and spent the next month asking everyone if we thought he hated her. She did the sobbing thing a lot. Anytime you sent even the mildest of emails, giving her even the most minor of corrections or suggestions, she'd immediately go into floods of the "I'm a terrible person," "that person hates me," or "everyone's ganging up on me" variety. Other fun little quirks: she was learning Russian and would frequently use that at work, but not in a useful way. It was at a hospital and we had lots of Russian patients, but she didn't use her Russian to facilitate communication. No, she would note that a patient was a Russian speaker and promptly launch into a recital of every Russian word she knew. And yet, she hugged patients, unprompted, a lot. Look, our patients were genuinely going through some crap, so I get the impulse, but I don't know that a total stranger appearing out of nowhere and hugging you without warning was really the comfort she intended it to be. I mentioned it to our manager once, and he genuinely looked like he was going to cry and whispered, "How many times can I tell her?" She had an MPH and wanted everyone to know. It was an entry-level desk job, and she wasn't any good at it. But somehow we were supposed to be impressed that she had an extra degree, even though she did the same scut work as the rest of us. She got emblazoned after her name on her hospital fleece. She had this weird fixation on one of the doctors. He was a bit of a nightmare to work with, and most of us at least idly tried to time our promotions so that we wouldn't end up in his clinic. But she was convinced that she could take him in hand and solve everything overnight. She gave him a present once, which creeped him out as he'd never actually met her. She'd gotten engaged at a friend's wedding. Her fiancé proposed, but it was clearly her idea. It wasn't even a close friend. Story 53, my ex-boss, Lore. She was the CFO and the lead for me and a single other finance person, like 3 people total, running the entirety of the finances for a whole company. Anyway, we were 1 week away from implementing an ERP system which was supposed to streamline the entire company processes. Think about it as going from dozens of Excel spreadsheets to an actual software where it's all in one. Anyway, the week before we were to begin using it full-time was Christmas week. My boss fired the other finance person, so what was a 3-person team became a 2-person team, and what we were already doing was far too much for 3 people anyway. Cue the beginning of my working 14+ hour days, including the weekends. I was salary, so yay, no overtime. I ended up having to take on almost all of the finance side, and it was just way too much. She didn't hire anyone to help me at all while I was there, and whenever things got behind, she threw me under the bus so many times. Anyway, I had to move back home to a different state for family reasons, and she agreed to let me work remotely. That was great and all, but then the workload tripled, and the amount of stress I was under also tripled. She finally hired someone, and she told me that I needed to come back to train the new girl at the peak of COVID. I was living with my grandparents at the time, and they were the one as high risk being in the over 80 age group. I asked if I could postpone until things got better, and she said that I would be inconveniencing her by not coming to train. I told her that the last thing I would want is to be the cause for my family to get sick. I was furious. I took a deep breath and I told myself that I didn't need this abuse. So the following morning, I packed up all of the things I brought with me from my job, took it to UPS, paid for the shipping with the company card, and came home and sent an email to the CEO stating why I quit and felt a million times better. No regrets. Duck 'em. Treat your employees right and they'll stay for a lifetime. Story 54. My first job ever was at a vet clinic doing reception and occasionally kennel work. I worked with this lady in reception who had been there for 18 years and was making way too much an hour for the bullcrap work she did all day. Once I was hired and trained, she would sit on Facebook all day and write fan fiction. This woman was 50-something years old. If I was checking out a client and the phone would ring, I would have to ask the client to please hold while I answered the call and put them on hold, then finish checking out the client and get back to the call. I did literally every ducking thing while she just sat back and wrote some 50 Shades of Grey spinoff. I made barely above minimum wage and was doing the job of 2 people. One week I worked overtime, and they ducked me out of it and couldn't pay it when this woman who ducked off all day every day was making $18 ducking an hour. Needless to say, once they ducked me on my 4 hours of overtime, I immediately started looking for a new job. I still owed them for my cat's spay, but they can suck. This was 9 years ago. Still pisses me off every time I think about it. Oh, and most recently I was working as a bather for a groomer. My hands were getting extremely cracked and dried, and I asked my coworker if I could borrow some lotion. I put it on, and by the time I was done, she had a dog in the bath. So instead of interrupting her, I dropped it in her purse. I purposefully stood to the side of it and dropped it in from about 6 inches up. I did this, so if she tried to say I stole anything, the camera that was back there could clearly see that all I did was drop it in and walk away. I didn't linger or put my hand anywhere near it. Of course, after I left for the day, she accused me of stealing, and the boss called me. I denied I even touched her purse and told her to watch the cameras if she needed proof. She believed me and told the girl. The girl ended up making a huge scene, and the cops were called. She was told to leave and not come back. I was livid, but I'm so glad I thought ahead to make the exact steps I did just in case something like that did happen. I had a gut feeling she would try some shady crap like that at some point. Story 55. On a contract job, I had to share a small cube with one of the most gratingly rude and obnoxious holes I've ever met. Even worse, she insisted on sitting on a huge yoga ball in there and rocking back and forth on it, so she was constantly bumping into my chair. She also constantly smacked her lips while eating, and she was always eating. I'm pretty sure the yoga ball and annoying eating habits were to try to force me quit so she could have the entire cube to herself. But at the time, the economy was terrible, so there were no other jobs available. Eventually, I went to my manager to beg him to move me, and by then he had heard all about her terrible habits and crafty attitude from other people. So he moved me as a kindness. I don't think she stayed there too much longer anyway, as by then she had pissed off most of the people she came into contact with. Story 56. I used to work in a call center, and although we had our share of terrible hires, one girl stood out. She would regularly ignore her phone because she didn't feel like taking calls, and would spend all her time on Facebook, etc. One day she told the staff she was going in for a major operation and would be off for 2 weeks. Although she wasn't the most popular staff member at this point, everyone still got her a card and put money in to buy her some gifts for when she was off work. About 3 days into her absence and during what would have been her surgery time, another girl spotted her shopping for makeup with friends and then took photos of her. When the girl came back in, she was met with death stares from 100 colleagues, and when asked how her operation was, she hammed it up and said she was still in pain. The manager immediately screamed at her to get in his office and was so loud that the rest of us could hear every word. HR got involved, and she was gone in 24 hours, which was followed by her attempt to sue for unfair dismissal. Thankfully, she didn't get far. Story 57. In grad school, I had an assistantship with a department other than my own. I made $800 a month, so I was constantly looking for another assistantship that paid better. The crux of this story is, I was working for my mom's friend, who basically got the job for me. I didn't wait around to see if I could get an assistantship in my actual department. Bad move in retrospect. And my boss always seemed to think I really owed her something for this job. Maybe I did, and I'm a total a-hole, IDK. I eventually got another assistantship. I applied 1 week. I was on vacation the next week when I found out that I got the assistantship, and my boss was on vacation the following week. I told her supervisor, who was the head of the department, that I had a new assistantship, planning to tell my boss in person when she came back from vacation. Well, her supervisor told her I was leaving. My boss was so angry that I hadn't told her yet that she refused to speak to me for the rest of the time I was there except to give me orders. Then her supervisor lectured me about how I burned my bridges with them for not telling my boss that I was applying for other jobs ahead of time. Who tells their boss they're looking for another job? I mentioned that the main reason I was looking for another job was because I couldn't afford to make $800 per month before tax. My rent alone was $500 a month sharing a house with 2 roommates. They then lectured me about owning a car and having a dog as though I could live on that little money if I didn't have a car. The dog, I understand, TBH. But my mom helped me pay for her for mental health reasons. Oh, and the next 2 assistants they had didn't work out either. My department no longer tells people about that assistantship because the people after me had so many problems. That was long. Story 58. The day I went in for orientation, there was me and another guy plus 2 girls. The other guy was bragging about how he used to be a cook at Taco Bell and could go back anytime he wanted because they needed him. Meanwhile, I'm staring at the scabs on his neck, face and back of his neck. Suddenly, I'm not really into Taco Bell anymore. He was lazy. We'd work in teams, and one time when stocking shelves, I got stuck with him. He'd grab a case of mayonnaise, look down the aisle, and decide it won't fit, so it goes in the cart to go in the back. Anyone working at Walmart knows you can't put things in the back unless they can go out or go in top stock on top of the shelves. He did that with 11 cases. I did that with 3. My manager wanted to write both of us up for trying to backstock 14 cases of food, 8 of which could go out. Guess which 8? They talked to us separately. He tried to throw me under the bus, saying it was me who put all of those on the cart. They knew I was one of the best workers, always there, always doing my work, always helping my coworkers, asking managers for work if there was nothing to do, etc. Then I went and told them exactly what happened. They looked at the video. He got written up and I didn't. 2 weeks later, he basically quit. No called, no showed for a week. Came back like nothing happened and said he was sick. This is after a bunch of times of him coming in and then going home sick, right, as we were going to start unloading trucks. Shaking, twitching, acting like he was going to throw up, etc. He even told me the day after we got paid once that his girlfriend stole his paycheck. Want to guess why he was such a lazy coworker? You guessed it, Methead. Story 59. I used to deliver puppies to people who would adopt them from different shelters. I would drive with my troll of a coworker from Arkansas to Maine and back every weekend. I was basically a puppy Santa, and I would get to meet wonderful people who have us cookies or other snacks and drinks, and I would get to give them a dog and see them get so happy. That part was great. However, the woman I had to drive with was probably the most toxic person I've ever had the displeasure of knowing. She would freak out over everything, but in a very whiny, the world is going to end and you've ruined my life forever kind of way. For instance, we would take turns driving, and one time, she told me to drive when we were about an hour outside of New York. I'm from a town of like 200 people and never driven anywhere near a big city, and I told her I didn't know where to go. She proceeded to say, just pay attention, and went to sleep. Of course, I go the wrong way and end up on a highway leaving into New York instead of around it, and she wakes up as I'm paying like $3 at a toll booth and freaks out saying, "Oh no," over and over again. I realized I went the wrong way for about 10 minutes. She said I was going to get in trouble for going the wrong way and that we can't afford to pay for extra toll booths, even though I paid with my own $3, and continued to freak out for the next hour, even though we were back on track. We only lost like 30 minutes. She even told our boss that I messed up and made us late for all our deliveries, even though we weren't. She acted this way all the time. On top of all of that, she would scream loudly at the dogs for barking or popping in their kennels. I call her the traveling troll. She was massively obese and never bathed. She had warts on her face and was always nasty and rude. The coworker from hell. I quit an amazing job BC of a troll. Story 60. So this guy wasn't in my department nor in my command structure, but this guy was the CEO dad, brought in to help out. He did things like hold private meetings with his underlings in which he poisoned employees against each other, to not working and taking long lunch breaks. At one time, he turned his entire debt against my manager, to debt that wasn't connected in any way. His actions destroyed friendships, working relationships, trust, and absolutely destroyed the working environment as a whole. Story 61. A coworker I still hate to this day. Back in 2012, I used to work in an insurance office. This chick was extremely rude to junior colleagues, made a fuss anytime things were not going her way, and made sure my life was hell when handing over work tasks. Anytime you would try to confront her, she would go and cry to our manager. Oh yeah, she also had a secret chat with some of the chosen colleagues where she would make fun of other people's looks and generally start office gossip. I'm extremely happy I quit, and I hope I never see her again. Story 62. Oh, I got one for you guys, so I worked in crafty gas station. I had a coworker we'll call Jenny. Jenny was on light duty as ordered by her daughter when I first started working there. Her injury was a heel spur, and she never missed an opportunity to complain about it. She wasn't supposed to lift more than like 30 pounds or stand for more than a half hour at a time. Not a big deal, right? First time I came in to relieve her from a shift was a busy Friday afternoon. She had 2 full pages of her coloring book colored in and thought it would be cute to write that on our task list for the day. Under additional tasks completed. All right, annoying, but she's youngish. What do you really expect from a 20-something-year-old with a medical issue? Over time, her antics became more and more ridiculous. A stray dog wandered over to the station and she brought it inside. Let it wander around the inside of the store, where there's plenty of food on the shelves for it to get into. She then proceeded to make a Facebook post about it, and also wrote those things on the task list as if it were part of her job. The thing that really drove home for me how useless this girl was when the assistant manager finally told her she couldn't bring her coloring books to work anymore. She'd been off light duty for months, but continued sitting at the desk coloring during all her shifts while neglecting all her cleaning duties. She cried and walked out mid-shift when she was told, and then filed a complaint with corporate claiming she was being bullied by the assistant manager. Story 63. I'll call her SJ because I don't work with her anymore. And you can't do a lot with just initials. SJ worked for the company before, but was fired because of her former manager. She was hired back by the newer manager at the time, because everyone deserves a second chance. No, a lot of people don't. She would swipe groceries across the counter and bag them even if they didn't scan, call out almost every shift the hour before because she can't find a babysitter, have her family come in and stock for her, which isn't allowed at all, complain about her store coupons not working and demanding we change them since she works here, and most damning of all, threatened to sue for discrimination when she was warned about termination after she had her 10th call out in under a month. After she was fired again, she made it her life's mission to give us even more hell than before. Since she's the customer now, we have to do what she says or she'll file a complaint. This didn't go on long, but she was also caught stealing when we wouldn't change prices for her. I hate her with an honest-to-God passion, but even more now knowing she's the assistant manager at the other location across town. SJ, you are a terrible person. I hope you see this to know everything you do involving that job is wrong and honestly sad. You're part of the reason I quit, and you deserve nothing but the future firing coming your way. Story 64. Had a guy that I worked with in my meat department at the store I work at. He would lose his mind over any little thing and get super angry and make everyone very uncomfortable. I was training a new guy, and he was on one of his tantrums, so I had to get my managers to help me out. One time he got so mad that he threw an actual meat cleaver in the wall, and the dent is still there to this day. He got fired a few months ago, and it's been the happiest that the department has been in a long time. Story 65. Our ops manager left the company, and we struggled to find a replacement until we got a guy that seemed really good. He had plans to make work life more efficient, and he was quite personable too. One day he comes to me all embarrassed, full of shame, to ask if he could borrow some money as he hadn't yet been paid and he and his wife and child were struggling to make it to payday. I didn't think too much of it. The man needed help and I could help. Lent him 700 pounds on the proviso that he returned it in full on payday. Of course, there were excuses. I gave him the benefit of the doubt as I know how hard it can be when you get a new job and you have to wait ages to get paid. The next payday rolls around and there are more excuses, so I told him that if he didn't pay me the money as promised the next day, then I would be causing a stink and left it at that. The next day he was gone. Nobody knew why, except the manager, and he wasn't telling. A couple of days later, I was called into HR, who asked me if OP manager had asked to borrow any money, and if I had agreed, so I told them straight up. Turns out he had borrowed money off of almost every employee, and it amounted to thousands of pounds. Not only that, but he had asked a colleague in her late 60s to get a 2,000-pound loan out for him that he would pay back that month. She agreed, but her husband put a stop to it and reported him. The company owner paid back every penny that scumbag borrowed, as long as you could show a screenshot or bank statement that you sent money to his account. People that gave him cash were Saul. Story 66. My old district manager partner. She was a very attractive extrovert, and I'm a guy who likes to keep to himself. I would end up brainstorming a lot of good ideas to further the stores we were in charge of, and she would pass those ideas off to our boss before we could both have a conversation with him, taking all the praise and recognition. I never said anything, because as long as our metrics were met and my check was on time, I didn't really care until I got yelled at for not contributing to the team. Needless to say, I stopped taking crap from coworkers from then on. Story 67. My current tool buddy at work is more tool than buddy. She's by far the worst person I've ever worked with at any job or on any project. She complains non-stop about everyone and everything. If someone doesn't move out of her way immediately, they're an a-hole. If someone is waiting for her to move out of the way, they're still the a-hole. We've been running conduit on this job site for about 7 months now. She refuses to use a level when bending or do any calculations because when you've been in this business as long as I have, you can do it all by eye, except her pipes are always wrong. And when they're a little bit off, rather than just adjusting what we've already made, she insists on one of us just smashing away at it until it fits and looks like a piece of crap. I got stuck working with her because literally everyone else on our site refused to after about 3 days of being around her, and they all have seniority. Story 68. IF was a busser runner at a restaurant when I was a senior in high school. It was a brand new restaurant, so all the staff were new together. There was a server there who was like somewhere in the 26 to 28 age range, F, and she had been waitressing since she was 17 to 18 in a few different places, so she was pretty good and well liked by many customers. She could handle a lot of tables and would make great tips, but she hated sharing them. Bussers were to be tipped by 3% of the dept sales at the end of the night. She argued that was so much and too much. She argued that she is older and needs the money more than we would because she had a car payment and rent. She made them bring it down to 1.5%. A few months go by. I notice my tips are always lower with her, even when she isn't working in the smaller section. And by the way, she would switch shifts and take off when it would be her turn for her to work the smaller section of the restaurant. So she always had the bigger section. She knew how to finesse it, so she always made the most money, and not in a fair way. So I begin to feel she's shorting me, because at times I would overhear her saying things like, "She missed that plate, that's gonna cost her." Or she would ask me to make her a dessert, then get angry when I'd miss a plate. Or she would have to run another table's appetizers out because I'm busy making the dessert that she should be making. I eventually called her out on it, and she hated my guts after that. Oh well, boo-hoo. Don't be an a-hole. Story 69 had a manager whose opening line when I first met him was, "I don't like you already." Mother Ducker had a major pickle up his arse and even threw a cabinet door at me. Got me square in the back, but I witnessed him get put into his place by the old lady I was helping. She gave me a good tip too, so that was nice. The worst was when I went into the bathroom and he stood outside the bathroom yelling for me. Apparently, "Can I finish taking a crap?" was an inappropriate response. When I quit, my other manager let me know that he has been talked to repeatedly, but he is friends with someone higher up. Story 70, a new hire for a different team. So my wife and I work together in a bigger company, but you would never know it since she has a different last name and sits very far away from me. Well, the new hire sees a shirt she wore one day was for an anime he also liked. He immediately spent 2 hours at her desk, asking her way too many questions about her, ignoring the fact she is married. He then proceeds to join us every day for lunch with some other work friends and only talks to the women at the table, all of whom are happily married. This goes on for a few weeks before I caught him sleeping and snoring at his desk. I emailed his manager to check on him and is caught sleeping on the job and is fired. We were very lucky he was also a bad employee. One side note, I found out after he was fired, he was making explicit remarks to one of the shy women that reports to me. I let her know that she should never be shy about coming forth immediately about any time of harassment or other people making her uncomfortable, and that I and the HR team are there to ensure a safe and friendly work environment. Story 71. I worked for about 8 months in an office with a woman that was just so incredibly miserable I had heart palpitations driving to work every day for 7 months and 3 weeks. She always felt overwhelmed. She always felt overlooked. She was nasty. She was lazy. I was her supervisor, and I really tried to be as nice as possible to her. Help her with work. Let everyone leave early when their work was done. It was never enough. We worked with 2 other men, and she would make them cry daily. Grown-ass men crying because of her, coming to me asking for help. Senior management didn't want to know about it because she was a superstar in sales. I was at my absolute breaking point when a friend called me up and got me in at his company. It felt like a 100-pound weight was lifted off my chest. Story 72. I work in sales and I'm very good at what I do. I've worked hard to get good at it, and I'm in a supervising position. A male coworker, who was only a trainee, told me on his first day, after he saw me make sale after sale while it wasn't working out for him, "You're only good because you are a woman." Story 73. Blonde monster peaked in high school, has been at her job too long and tries to control everyone. My job has a high turnover in this one office, but refuses to believe it's her. Story 74. I had just left an abusive BF and told everyone at work that if he shows up, say I'm not there. One male manager decided to tell him exactly where I am and told me I have daddy issues. Story 75. I had a coworker in the Navy, IRC. He was an E5 when I was an E3. Super big ego. Once called me out for messing up the logs. Called me out publicly for it, so I took the book to take a look and trace it back and found that it was his mistake that got everything out of sync. Pointed it out and he rushed it away and pulled me into a room to talk. At some point he dropped the "you wouldn't like me when I'm mad" Hulk thing. He was pathetic, and on more than one occasion I thought we'd get into a fight. One particular event sticks with me. The nurses used to make me Filipino food, and it was awesome. One time he got very upset because he was told to share. Something about his wife is Filipino and he's entitled to it. My grandmother is 100% Filipino, even though I don't look it at all unless you know what to look for. Ran into him later in Afghanistan as an E5. He was still an E5. It seems his ego and his performance didn't quite match up. Story 76. As a teenager, I worked at a bowling alley. I greeted a new girl as she came in, and she just stuck her tongue out at me. Within the hour, she was fired for dropping a ball on a complaining patron's foot. Story 77. The hospital CEO's executive assistant. Typical call to the help desk. "Finally!" "Really 7 rings? Why is the mouse freezing? When will it? Why fixed?" Or, "Finally, when is the printer going to start printing? Come ASAP." As low man on the IT totem pole, I had to handle all of her nonsense. Story 78. His name was Lenny, and he was a mess. On his first day, he drove a van over the side of a loading dock, punctured the oil pan, and then didn't tell anyone until one of long haul guys asked why the dock was blocked. I was riding shotgun with him once, and he was driving. He was also nodding out while driving and trying to eat soup at the same time. He once had me drive to the post office to pick up a package for him. It was a brick of hash, sent to his full name. At the post office, he opened the package in the truck to show me all the hash he had. He claimed that he was the boss's cousin. Well, he was. He was the boss's cousin and an assistant tour manager. The pass of an overdose while on tour. Story 79. There was this one guy who had terrible breath and he never shut up. Would seriously come over to your desk and talk non-stop about bullcrap for what seemed like forever. The whole time you're sitting there, smelling his terrible breath. And of course, on top of that, he's never doing any actual work. Luckily, he was eventually fired. But my company was one of those companies that took forever to fire someone. That annoying coworker. What does he or she keep doing? Story 1. Open plan office. And he tries to project image of himself as a people person. So he talks really loudly and tries to make sure every interaction he has with other staff members ends on a hearty laugh. 2 minor problems here. 1. He only laughs at his own jokes, and 2. He doesn't have sense of humors. That aside, he's a regular joke machine. These are just from while I'm sitting here writing this. It's always in the last place you look. The more the merrier. Any excuse. To a group of men, ladies, please. As little as possible. Well, either brave or stupid. He's not a bad human being, but I may hit him, and I will accept whatever sentence the courts hand down. Story 2. My wife has an annoying coworker that uses that fake spray tan stuff. We're not sure if it's a nervous tic or what, but she likes to rub the side of her face against door jambs and corners if she's leaning against it while talking to you. Their office is full of orange patches about 5.5 feet up from the ground. Story 3. She doesn't type like a normal person. She smashes the keys like they hit her family. Apparently, my coworker isn't the only one that does this. Story 4. He doesn't get my social cues of when I want to end a conversation. I've started to get pretty blatant now, turning my back and starting to type an email, etc. But it doesn't seem to get it. One time I started walking down the corridor to the kitchen to end the conversation, and he decided to get up and follow me down, continuing to talk all the way. Story 5. Finish his words while you're talking like a rapper's hype man. So, last night I went to the grocery store. When I was in the line to check out, the guy in front of me was paying with a check. It took this guy 10 minutes to write it out. Story 6. She's just oblivious to why. She's a crafty employee. She takes days off because she drinks too much. She disappears for hours while on the clock. She doesn't understand the business, and I clean up her mistakes. Her boss criticizes her for these things, and she starts crying because she's in a constant state of going through a lot right now. Story 7. Sips, slurps, coffee, and goes loudly every freaking time. Forgot to mention, the travel mug he drinks from has some sort of pressure valve that squeals every time he takes a drink. Story 8. Wants to be the shop martyr. Volunteers for very minor projects and constantly keeps everyone updated with her amazing progress. Is negative. Always turns conversation to herself. Gossips. Is ducking amazing because she completes tasks that are basic parts of our job description and makes sure we all know it. Expects medals for volunteering to work. Calls in to see if we really need her. Has a Tinkerbell tattoo. Obsessed with Disney. I could go on. Story 9. Has an ego so big that it is slowly pulling the moon out of orbit to circle around her instead. She is a head teacher for our child student. Believes the sun shines out of her ass. And if we're not doing things her way, down to the tiniest detail, then we're not doing it right. Also pulled this one on me. In my past life, I was an Aboriginal Australian. We danced around Uluru. Your favorite color is blue, right? Then your aura color is red. She reminds me a lot of Dolores Umbridge, actually. Everything she owns is pink and adorable, and constantly has the mindset of, my way is best for everyone. Story 10. On my first day, I was warned about her as everyone knew I would be sitting beside her. She arrives the next day and starts telling me about the terrible day she had yesterday. Wee fella wasn't well, so had to take him to hospital. I thought, oh, that's terrible. Hope he is okay. Want to see a photo of him? She proceeds to show me a photo of a lizard in a Santa costume. Another day, she is complaining she can't find one of her favorite shoes. Later on, she remembers where she put it. The trip switch in her fuse box kept tripping, so she took the shoe and used it to jam the switch on so she could use the kettle and forgot about it. Recently, she checked her bank account online and started swearing, saying she was going to hit her daughter as she was just billed 274 pounds from O2. She goes to O2 at lunchtime to see how the daughter could manage this large a phone bill. It wasn't the daughter's phone, it was hers. It turns out she doesn't know how to hang up her phone and had left different people hours and hours of voicemail messages, going 13 hours over her free minutes. She spends her lunchtime on council websites, reading through the burial records and seeing when different people were buried. She already asked most of the other staff where their relatives are buried so she can look it up. If she isn't looking up morbid details on her lunch, she is normally at a local fancy shop, walking around trying all the free tasters instead of buying a lunch. On one occasion, her daughter left her Facebook logged in on her phone. Crazy lady proceeded to read through her entire Facebook message log and read them out. It turns out her daughter is partial to a do substance. She really is a head case who gets away with doing little to nothing in work. She has no idea how to use her computer, and when people show her, she goes, "Oh no, you do it and I will watch," and learns nothing. She has such a simple job, which takes me a few hours to do, but it takes her all day. The manager lost the head and ignores her now. Story 11. Leg tapping. It's ducking infuriating. We have connected tables/spacers, and I've even separated the desks, but I'm still constantly vibrating. He's brought down books, named Toblerones, nothing is safe. I can't even have a glass of water on my desk without feeling like I'm in Jurassic Ducking Park. Story 12. Gets angry when I try to Febreze our shared office space. She says it smells terrible. I agree, but it's not as terrible as whatever is seeping out of her ass. Story 13. This comes up all the time, but please, for the love of duck, clip your goddamn toe fingernails at home. Apparently, there are a lot of people out there doing this. Story 14. Constantly wanting to switch shifts and take off holidays using her kids as an excuse. I get it, you want to be there for your kids, but I have a life and a family as well. Story 15. Prince. Every ducking thing all day long, from the moment he gets here until the moment he leaves. Receive an email. Print. It sends an email, prints it, Googles something, prints the results page. Story 16. My coworker is a land whale with a lazy eye. That sounds mean, but it's true. I'm 22 and she's like twice my age. I don't drink or party, but she insists on telling me all about her hot parties and how much she drinks and cheats on her husband. She says they have an open relationship, except he can't be with other women. Only she can be with other men. She gets super annoyed about it. I try to go to lunch by myself because I like to read Reddit on my break, and she'll see me leave and follow me. Then she proceeds to talk for the entire half hour about her life and how much she drank over the weekend. I don't drink because I'm a recovering addict, and once I start drinking, I don't stop. I was hospitalized for it, diagnosed bipolar, and now I'm trying to piece my life back together, and she knows this and yet still talks about it all. I just want to eat my lunch in peace and quiet. I was sober for almost a year before having a relapse in August and a diet attempt in September. Since I got out of the hospital on September 10th, I've been completely sober. AA and NA are very helpful, and I recommend them to everyone. To all of you saying she wants the D, that's going to be pretty tough, seeing as I'm a girl. Also, nasty. She's greasy, old, and I never know where to look when speaking to her because I'm not sure which eye to look at. She is a temp worker, so I'm hoping she'll be gone soon. It's a long-term temp position, so it ranges anywhere from 2 months to a year. She said she wants to be out before winter is over, so I don't want to go to HR and complain just to find out that she's leaving anyways. I know that's a stupid excuse, but I really just need to tell her to stop talking about that stuff and mean it. So far, I've just made sure I go to lunch after she's already gone. It's a small price to pay for some peace. Thanks for all the replies. When I get off work, I'll try to respond to everyone. Story 17. Doesn't have a car, 11:55 rolls around. Hey, you guys heading out for lunch? Mind if I hitch a ride? That alone isn't so bad. But then there are the days when he says, just grab me something, all I have is a card. Then there are the days when I bring my lunch. Oh, you brought your own lunch today? That's cool, I guess. Mopes away. Then once he bothers everyone with a car, to no avail. Hey, are those chips? Mind if I have some? I didn't get to have any lunch. You're a ducking adult, John. Story 18. The perfect mixture of being an idiot and being condescending about it. The kid is the most junior person in our group, so I'm willing to excuse his constant breaches of office protocol. There's a lot of stuff you just won't know until you've been in a high-pressure office for a few years. But if you think you're too good for your assignments, then don't just glare at people who give them to you. Stop ducking up the assignments. My favorite example is one Friday before a holiday, when he emailed to say that he hadn't been able to fall asleep the night before until an hour or so before. He was planning to take the afternoon off anyway, he said, so he was just going to stay home. Here's why that was stupid. One, he put in the reason for being out, and it was a crafty one. Again, this is a high-pressure office. Everyone works through being tired and pretty often. Either make up a good reason or keep it vague. Two, if you were planning to take a half day anyway, that's more reason to suck it up and come in, not less. Sleep in the afternoon. Three, he didn't make a hint of a suggestion about getting his work done. That's all anyone cares about, at least here. If you can put in a sentence or two making it clear that you're still on top of things. I'll be checking my email and responding throughout the day. You're fine even if, in practice, you're asleep for hours at a time. 4. He actually did have work due. This was the craziest part. It's one thing, as I said above, to breach office protocol. But if you have a deadline and something comes up, you have to work with your supervisors to find out how to get it done or get it postponed. You can't just ignore it. And this from the kid who goes around talking about what an expert he is at everything. Pro tip. If you want to impress your office, start by doing good work. Some people seem to be missing the point of that anecdote. Yes, you are always able to tell your supervisors that it's none of their business why you're calling in sick without any notice. If you want to succeed at your job, though, you should be making it clear to your superiors that you'll do everything you can to get the job done. And it's doubly true when, like the guy in this anecdote, you're just starting out and have no record to fall back on. I could wake up really tired some morning and call out if I wanted to, and I could get away with it at least once. But that's because one, I have the experience to know how to do it without sounding like I'm just skipping work, and two, they've seen me bust my ass enough that they feel they can trust me when I say that I'm too beat up to be any use. Story 19. He smells like sweat, and he keeps eating meatloaf and burping by the fan so it blows into my face. All I smell is BO and meatloaf burps. Now he's eating carrots with ketchup. This man is known for talking to himself a lot, so we all know he's a little odd. But his food choices are incredibly strange. We asked him if he liked meatloaf, and he said yes. We also asked him if he liked Beyonce, and he was indifferent. Story 20. I've been waiting for this so I can vent. So, many things. Random humming. Random in both meanings. Not at set intervals, so it can appear at any time, and random as in the tune. Dee-dee-doo-doot. No melody, any notes will do. Occasionally, year-round, she will hum the first 2 bars of Deck the Halls, and then immediately follow it up with the phrase, "It'll soon be Christmas." I've heard her do this in Ducking May. When she's eating a boiled sweet, like a Jolly Rancher or Werther's Original, she clicks it round her ducking teeth. It sounds like someone's smashing into a skeleton with a baseball bat, and she will make that ducker last as long as possible, as well. No initiative. She's been here coming up to 2 years, and she still asks questions about everything that she should definitely know by now. Yet she'll still ask me if she should do this or that or the other. Seriously, where do you think that PDF should be filed? It should be fairly obvious by now, as you do it on a daily basis. The stories, the boring ducking stories, she is completely devoid of any interesting qualities or anecdotes. She actually once told a story about how her dad went into a coffee shop, ordered a coffee, and the cup it came in was slightly larger than the one he gets at another coffee shop. That's the whole ducking story. She has a million of these, and she will frequently forget minute details that have no impact on the story whatsoever, and spend minutes trying to figure out if the letter on the coffee cup was blue or green. She never makes a round of teas, coffees. Anyone else? They get up and ask around to see who wants one. She always wants one. She never gets up to make a round. The way she'll ask you a question always starts with, So, Turner Prize, are you going on holiday soon? So, Turner Prize, did you see the football? So, Turner Prize, what are you eating for lunch? I mean, I understand that she's trying to make conversation, but just speak to me normally. And her laugh. It's not a bad laugh, but she just has the habit of chuckling to herself all the ducking time. At literally anything. The printer's run out of paper. Chuckle. It's raining again. I'll probably get wet waiting for the bus. Chuckle. Literally any sentence. She will find something funny in it. It drives me mad. I don't understand how one person can have so many annoying affectations. I don't think I could find an annoying habit in anyone else from my office. She's like a black hole of annoyance. She's taken up all the annoying traits that anyone else might have. I should probably find a new job, or at least a new seat in the office. You just ducking did. Stop doubling up on your questions and just ask me the ducking question you actually want answered. Same as Osvixen. Wants to be the office martyr. It was recently a coworker's 60th birthday, so we all chipped in to get a present. Well, she was put in charge of what to get him. Rather than just figure something out or get a couple of opinions, she proceeds to find something and ask every single person in the office what they think. I'm talking around 20 individual conversations to make sure everyone agrees on it. Or rather, to make sure everyone knows what a good ducking job she's doing of buying a present from a catalog. Story 21. Used to have a colleague that would listen to one song on loop the whole day every day. The song changed once in a while. For a week, it was Jason Mraz's Story 22. He has amazing qualities. He will come to me for help and ask me a question. Whilst answering the question, he will mirror what I'm saying. By the end of the conversation, he will repeat the solution back to me and ask me, "Right, have you got that now? I've never seen anything like it." Ironically, one of the questions he asked me was how Reddit works. I wonder if he'll see this and will Monday involve an interesting chat. Story 23. She thinks she's sending beautifully worded, tactful email requests for help with a task because she's lazy. But they are so obviously passive-aggressive that my colleagues and I laugh as we read them out loud to each other. Story 24. I don't think this woman is mortal. I think she was scientifically designed to annoy the love out of people until they crap their hearts out, rename their station wagon Vlad the Impaler, and drive it straight into a baby animal shelter. This is Kristen. Kristen is the only other person who does the job that I do, which is to answer phones. She does not do this. Instead, she talks very loudly about her previous addiction or makes incoherent whining noises that could probably shatter most windows. She also gets angry at me frequently for not entertaining her while she is not doing her job. An impossible task as I'm busy doing both of our jobs and trying not to curb stomp the ever-living crap out of her. In her eyes, however, I am neglecting her specifically to be mean, and so she has resorted to trying her very best to make me miserable. I have pretty horrible anxiety, and I occasionally get some pretty nasty panic attacks. This girl has made a serious effort to make sure I hear her telling everyone that I'm only trying to get all of you to feel bad for me as I attempt to discreetly leave the room. My hope is that if I continue to do her homework for her, she will be out of here that much sooner and on her way to fail nursing school. There's so much more, but I'm currently at work with this honky demon and typing this between calls. I'm slowly losing my sanity, one 9 to 5 at a time. I forgot the worst part. She calls me phlegm. Story 25. Mr. Squeaky Shoes is about 70. He looks kind of like Santa Claus if Kris Kringle was 5 feet tall. Mr. Squeaky Shoes falls asleep at his desk. I mean, he legit snores at his desk. Mr. Squeaky Shoes also has carpal tunnel. He was out of work for a month getting his hand operated on for it. Apparently, it didn't work because I still listen to him every day saying, "Click it," to his voice command program. There was one Friday that I swore if I heard "click it" one more time, I'd bust down the cubicle. Mr. Squeaky Shoes take his lunch at 10:15 a.m. Look, I've been there. You're bored and you're hungry, and sometimes the lunch bag starts looking really ducking appealing mid-morning in a cubicle. But the last thing I need to smell at this hour is fish, which Mrs. Squeaky Shoes packs for Mr. Squeaky Shoes way too often. One time Mr. Squeaky Shoes spilled his nautical soup and it crept under my cubicle. On those weird days in between seasons when the HVAC system has bipolar disorder and gets way too hot, I still get faint hints of low tide wafting up from beneath my desk. Mr. Squeaky Shoes is a software developer that has no idea how to use a computer. It took me 10 minutes to explain to him how to change margins on a Word doc. This is exacerbated by the fact that he can't use a mouse and has to navigate by voice. In the end, Mr. Squeaky Shoes isn't a bad guy. It's just that we're all trapped in this pressure cooker baking under these fluorescent lights, and after a while, some things are just too much. Also, his shoes squeak.